Welcome back to Mere Discipleship, a podcast where we answer honest questions with truth and scripture as we grow together in our walk with Christ through real conversations and practical faith for everyday life. My name is Travis Boyette, and today we have something very special for you. I recently sat down with a friend of mine, Tommy Langham, and I have to be honest with you, this conversation is one that stayed with me long after we stopped recording. We talked about what it really means to come to a true relationship with Christ, not just believing in your head, but knowing Him in your heart. We talked about ministry, what it actually looks like to serve, and the calling that takes you beyond your comfort zone on mission trips and into the lives of people who need the gospel. And then Tommy shared something that I think is going to meet a lot of you right where you are, his battle with cancer. 5 years being cancer-free and then hearing those words all over again. And through all of it, still being faithful, still serving, still standing. This conversation is honest, it's real, and it's the kind of testimony that reminds you that faith isn't just something you hold on to in the good times. It's what holds you together when everything seems like it's falling apart. So grab your coffee, find your comfortable spot, and let's dive in together. Here we go. I'm here with my friend Thomas Langham. Is that right?
My government name is what we use.
But we call him, all of us that know him, call him Tommy. So welcome, Tommy.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Nice to feel needed.
Heck yeah. He is my first guest. For those who've been listening to Mere Discipleship, we're about 4 episodes in. It'll be 5 episodes probably by the time this drops. Basic questions, especially geared towards new believers, but I still wanted to have testimonies and other people on, like pastors, elders, just people in ministry, period, to talk about life, especially life as Christians. I feel like there's a lot of people who think we live completely differently than everybody else, but no, we still have struggles. We still have, bills to pay. We still have everything that a person who doesn't believe has. We just, that faith makes it a little different. So I kind of just wanted to talk, just as my first guest, get into, we've kind of talked about the weeds of what faith looks like through hard times. But to get to that, I guess there are only parts of your story that I know and parts that I don't. So for you, Tommy, when did you come to really, there's those of us who always believed in something, but then there was a time in my life where I really developed a relationship with Christ. So can you kind of give your own testimony with actually finding God, or did you ever believe in Him, but never, when did you get that relationship with Jesus?
Absolutely. Let me preface with what you said. I think a lot of times people look at us like we've got our stuff together and whatnot. When we throw out the name Christian, that they think, oh, well, they've changed, they've accepted Jesus Christ, and everything is going much better. And that is so far from it. And sometimes I feel like we do a disservice to people that come in Christian. We get them to the water, we get them baptized, and we don't tell them that there's going to be more struggles. The devil's going to attack us even more.
Yeah.
And something that I heard recently at a children's ministry event was we're the first Bibles that some people are ever going to see.
Right.
And they, of course, they said it about children, but I've taken it to the fact that they're going to look at me as a Christian. They're going to see me living out the word. However, so I have to be on guard and pay attention that not necessarily do I have to get it right, but I've got to be in that breaking moment to be present, somebody that they can oh, wow, that's what Jesus is doing in their life.
Right.
So getting back to your question, I've known God all my life. I was raised a Catholic, so I was brought up that way. Granted, some of the things that the Catholic Church taught, or inadvertently I was taught, weren't exactly biblical. I'm not going to knock the Catholic faith by no means, but there was just things that started questioning my mind, like having to go to a priest to get forgiveness and still having to go through and pray certain prayers or the rosary or whatever as punishment. And it didn't line up. Later on, I was late 20s, found myself in a bad car accident and didn't realize the wife that I had at the time, she had been going to a church for 2 years and she had always wanted me to be a Christian. I started going to church because I had I broke a leg, couldn't go to the lake and hang out with my buddies and stuff like that. Huh. It was an extreme change from even a Baptist church. It was, they put the words to the contemporary songs up on projector and it's like, this is different. And sometimes the songs lasted a little longer than what,
right.
I wouldn't say full on Pentecost, but it was definitely, it was a Pentecostal-ish. Yeah, the Lord sought after me in that moment. I mean, He was always there. At some point in time, the service was the same every Sunday, and God tugged on me in an altar call, and I refused and bargained with God and said, okay, well, if this is real, I'll do it next Sunday. So the next Sunday came, and I kind of forgot about my deal, and even not even was even thinking about going up to the altar or whatever. And the preacher, after the first song, literally stood up and said, "Hey, look, somebody was supposed to give their life to Christ last week, and they didn't. I'm not, I'm not going further until they do." Which kind of almost sounds like somebody's holding you at gunpoint,
Yeah.
type of thing. I knew. I was like, "Wait a minute, God. I had time to talk. I totally forgot. I got time to talk myself out of this. You got to give me time,
Right.
whatever." And of course, I was on crutches, and the usher had taken my crutches because the church was packed. Literally, in the moment that I stood up, the usher was right there to walk me. I
Huh.
mean, it's like he knew. And I walked up, gave my life to Jesus, was baptized about a month later. Definitely still rocky. Had some really great men really poured into me, learning about a lot of stuff. Not everything in life goes the way you
Right.
want it to or planned. So ended up another church later on, heavily involved, learning, but not necessarily serving, even though there was kind of a desire to be on my heart to.
Mm-hmm.
Just there was a lot of conflicts between me and my ex-wife, and eventually we ended up divorcing. And then that caused some church hurt. Some people took sides and
Right.
things of that nature. I still got an early childhood degree, so I still taught at a couple Christian schools in between there, but I wasn't being churched. I wasn't doing anything.
Mm.
I was kind of one toe in, the other nine
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
I knew God was pulling on me to get back involved, and I was church shopping, and I had all these, oh, well, the music sucks, or
Mm-hmm.
this is not, or the preacher's kind of more flamboyant, more showy than he is biblical
Mm.
and stuff. And the current church I go to, it's funny. I'm listening to another church elder from a whole nother church talk all this smack about it, and literally he said, "Well, the preacher comes down on a hologram," and I'm like, "Wait a minute, I'm a Star Trek fan. I don't think we have hologram technology." And the guy got mad at me and was like, "You know what I mean, a projector?" And I'm like, "Okay, well, let me go check out this church." And I did. And the pastor preached really well, and of course, did not really like the music because I got accustomed to non-structure,
Yeah.
worship.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of structured. Made a deal with God, another one of those infamous deals I like to make with Jesus, and said, "Hey, look, I'll come here, but I'm not going to get to know any of these people.
Right.
I'll come and worship you and stuff." And I did. And lady that sat in front of me quite often, she started talking to me and started doing stuff. And then I had my first diagnosis of cancer, and she brought me a meal, and she invited me to Bible study, and God was already pushing on me to serve. God was already pushing on me to be involved, and just one thing led into another. And now, not that I've got a big head, but I've known church at my campus,
Mm-hmm.
church wide, and I'm actively involved in children's ministry, lead a men's Bible study, men overcoming adversity group at our encounter. I run the soundboard for encounter, a whole lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
Help with camps, go on mission trips. Whatever
Mm-hmm.
whatever God lays out in front of me, I'm like, here I am, take me.
Yeah, so I know about some of the stuff that you're involved with, and I want to get into some of that. When you're talking about that early stuff, though, like and when you're saying you were getting involved in church, did that mean so you weren't really serving, but maybe going to some Bible studies or some things like that? What did that look like? Because I didn't really, when I first really got involved with church too, I didn't really serve in a way. I guess and I don't want people to think that going every week is a big deal, like committing to going. It shouldn't feel like a burden going. There is a joy eventually that came with, oh, I'm getting to see these people every week. Serving almost looked at like those people have a special calling to be serving, but like I'll at least go check out a Bible to get my toe wet a little bit. For me, it took a few years to eventually be like, okay, like I actually do have this gift. I can play guitar. I'll let them know that, and then join the worship team. That took some time to get to that level. And so I guess, at what point did you actually start serving in the church?
Well, early on, I was invited to men's Bible studies
Mm-hmm.
and some things of that nature. Serving for me, it didn't develop till a little bit later. God called me to ministry. For me being a naive early Christian, I thought ministry was either a preacher
Yes.
or
Yes.
music ministry or something that seemed kind of showy and
Right.
stage ridden. And when I brought it up to my now ex-wife and even my ex-mother-in-law, they laughed at me. They literally just, and I'm like, I was like, I feel like God's leading me in ministry. And, instead of guiding me and teaching me, they laughed at me, and so I let it go, and it put a wall up for quite a while.
Mm.
That was probably, I guess, some of the conflict between me and my ex-wife. What God was showing me, and let me preface this and stuff, kind of like the 5 love languages. We all have different love languages.
Yeah.
I think we all serve, or we have different spirituality, I guess. Some people like real book knowledge.
Hmm.
Some people feel the Holy Spirit moving through them a little
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. For sure.
There's some things that we are more receptive to,
Hmm.
and I just constantly had this nudge of hospitality, of helping and doing stuff. And even though it's not even really one of my high spiritual gifts, when I've done the spiritual gift testing, if I was driving by somebody and God nudged me to pick somebody up that was walking, I felt safe to
Yeah.
do so. I've helped some homeless people, help, just do those serving. As far as actively physical church serving, I didn't really kind of ushered, side of ushered, like I would, if it was raining, I would, people with kids or whatever, I'd
Hmm.
park their car, I'd let them get out the doors, and I would go park their car for them. Those things that just seemed like, that nobody else was stepping in to do.
Right.
I didn't fully serve like children's ministry. Like every Sunday I
Hmm.
was, preparing lessons or being involved in that. Wherever it just early on, it just wherever that God seemed like there was an open space for me to get in. A lot of times I'm a very extreme extrovert, so
Yeah.
I don't have any problems just going ahead and putting myself in. Sometimes I volunteer before I'm even asked,
Hmm.
don't have a problem with that. It probably not until the last, 7 years or whatever, did I realize that ministry was more than being present on a stage trying to be
Right.
front and center attention. A lot of it's behind the scenes. Now, I did go on an early mission in 2007, the first mission trip I ever was on, and it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about, giving to people. The argument, well, why go to a foreign country when there's things need to be here?
Right. Right.
And and I was kind of the same mindset, and then I went to a foreign country and I saw a different aspect on people, on how they received Jesus, and pouring into people, and how a third world country was ripe and ready for people to love on them and care for
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
where
It's a big
we
deal.
as Americans sometimes put that wall up real quick, or, oh God,
Yeah.
here's a Bible thumping, they're going to tell me about Jesus and how I'm sinful, whatever. and,
Yeah.
and and they miss the idea that some of us are actually doing it in love. We're not doing it
Right.
to hold you underwater till you till you accept Jesus.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of the short to the serving. I still kind of find myself in those positions where God presents me somebody. Me getting to know Justin Blair a little bit more in depth was, I was working at an AutoZone commercial manager, and a lady came in that had just got kicked out of a rehab,
Hmm.
and I could tell, she needed something to drink, and she was asking price, and I could tell there was something off.
Hmm.
And I was like, hey, look, I'll buy you the drink, whatever. And then she kind of opens up to me, and then, and then next thing I know, I'm calling people trying to figure out how to get her into another facility.
Yeah.
What was going on, asking I mean, I got a crash course into addiction and facilities, and
Hmm.
the structure of it and stuff. One thing that I believe that God has blessed me with is the ability to gain knowledge, that I'm not like, oh well, that's not my forte, so I don't want to know anything about it.
Right. Right.
I'm a sponge, and so there's been times where somebody else may be like, I don't know anything about this. I'm not going to worry about it. But it's like God puts it in front of me, and I'm like, okay, let's figure this out. Let's
Yeah.
try to do whatever.
Yeah, that's good, man. Yeah, I like that you brought that up because that's probably one of the biggest. When I started leading groups, teaching, preaching, any of those number of things, and even with podcasts, there's so many people that, especially, you see them get on fire for the Lord, and that's a whole term too. That some people are like, "What, on fire?" But they get really passionate in their new relationship with Jesus. So they start seeking him out. Maybe they start going to Bible studies. They start really reading their word. And the next thing you know, they're like, I feel called to ministry. And that's one of the first things I'll ask them back is like, what do you think that is? Because a lot of people, yeah, they think, well, if I start serving at the church, then maybe I can get up there on the stage and start teaching and start preaching. I'm like, that is great if that's where God puts you. Ministry is not necessarily those things. And some people forget that a marriage is a ministry. You're just serving your church family is a ministry. If you have kids, that's a ministry. A ministry can be the place, including like factory work. If God puts you there and he's promoting you up through the ranks and you're going to, that's a ministry in itself. And a lot of people overlook that. I've been in the manufacturing factory world for years, and I overlooked that as like that's a ministry. And it wasn't until probably a couple of years ago when I was at a place that I'm no longer at. I had an office. I kept getting promoted, and eventually I had an office, was working night shift, and I still work night shift. But every blue moon, people would come in there and they knew I was in recovery and they knew I was a Christian. And they would start coming in there and saying, "Man, I think I'm done with drinking. Like I just don't want to live that life anymore. How'd you quit?" And they would just start coming to me and like asking these random questions. Why do you read the Bible? What got you to start believing? And dude, I was just, okay, I get it now, God. It started to click. I think you put me here for a reason, because especially in the factory world, you can find rampant amounts of drugs and drinkers, and but there's people there that I think really want help, but they have that stigma of an addict, like I'm a factory worker, God's kind of overlooking them almost. And it's like, no, I'm trying to stay open minded to, yeah, wherever God puts me, that's my ministry. So whether it is on a stage or whether it's just, especially raising kids, teach, especially kids, like in today's society, in today's world, man, that's a big ministry. Just showing them how to treat, for us guys, how to treat a lady, how to treat your parents. Like you said with the sponge, they soak that stuff up real quick, whether you think they are or not. They hear you and they see you, and man, that's a. So yeah, since I'm going there, when did you really get involved with? I know you're really big in children's ministry, and you said I didn't know some of that you had taught at some children's Christian schools before. When has that always been something you've had a passion for, or like that you've always been kind of gifted in? Because I know you do a lot with children's ministry.
Yeah, teaching was always there, even at a younger age. I really had some horrible teachers. Of course, I went Catholic school for a couple of years,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
honestly, I had a very abusive a fifth grade teacher. I
Mm.
got the award for being the biggest crybaby. He would literally
Wow.
he took me out of the classroom a lot of times and would pretend to whoop me with the yardstick till I cried. Yeah, I mean, it was,
Jeez.
yeah. So there was a passion of being different and being there for the kids that had less,
Yeah, yeah.
and unfortunately, I didn't. I started out at college right out of high school. I got wrapped up in the music and smoking weed and
Yeah.
stuff like that. I was never an addict, but socially, did that stuff, and then just kind of just meandered away, and of a lot of the stuff I knew that I would shouldn't have done,
Hmm.
and then I went back to school, got an early childhood degree, which basically in Kentucky I could teach birth to kindergarten. Unfortunately, it's not mandatory, so the jobs aren't necessarily always stable, because if public school has the funding, the kids, the low income, the special needs kids
Yeah.
to supplement it, then they'll have it. But if not, then either you lose your job or you get absorbed. You have to take another job within the school system and move
Mm.
classrooms or whatever. And then on the Christian side, a lot of them have them, but they don't pay very well,
Right,
or they
right.
don't have benefits or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where I picked a very specialized career for whatever reason. God showed me this, but it works really well with children's ministry,
Mm.
because the brain development, the brain has shown me that a lot of us, even in children's ministry, don't really understand how kids work. And it's just spitting out knowledge of the Bible or whatever. It does fall on ears. They are listening, they
Hmm.
are absorbing. We also need to think that not everybody is a visual learner or
Yeah.
an auditory learner. We also I joke a lot of times. I was like, the Bible is basically a book written for children. He calls us to be children of God,
Right.
but it's the same story over and over again. We're a bunch of children. We need God. We realize God is there. Then we don't need God no more. We can do it on our own.
Yeah.
And then we turn around and then we get into trouble.
It's
And
true.
then we need to call out to God again to help him step in and fix it. And then we're back with God. And it's over and over again. And I think that having that mindset is like having a fifth grader, a 10-year-old, 11-year-old sitting in front of you.
Mm.
They're listening, and they understand to honor their mom and dad. They know the perspective. They've been told it. We're teaching them, but they also know that when they given the right thing, when it's a choice to do dishes or continue to play an
Yeah.
Xbox game, they're gonna play the Xbox game, and they're gonna probably and to understand that we are still that as adults, that we're going to make those type of mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
We're still going to want to do what we want to do when God calls us to do other stuff. I don't really like traveling to other countries. I went on vacation a couple years ago to Ireland, but it was after I did a week of mission trip, and other people have literally, it's like, you give up your vacation to go on mission trips. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they're like, why? And it's like, because the joy that I get out of it. And if I could just get people to understand the joy that I get serving, being involved and whatnot, and it's constant. And I understand, like, especially like, burnout and the preachers and some of the church leadership, this is all they do, and this is all, and it's like everybody comes
Right.
to them and they're burdened with other people's issues and they can't fix everything. I get that. But man, once you really tap into the joy
Mm.
of man, it's hard to not, I mean, I literally want to shake people. It's like, how do you not understand
Yeah.
that there's joy in this? Every morning I am joyful for getting to sit down with a kid, watching. There was a child that we had I don't want to, let me see how I say this so I don't like put
Mm-hmm.
put
Mm-hmm.
a children's minister into a bad blood. But anyway, he kind of said some stuff he probably shouldn't have said, and it wasn't bad, but it was like, "Hey kid, you're annoying," and you could tell this kid was already struggling. He was already living in the world of his diagnosis, his ADHD, and
Mm-hmm.
all this other stuff. And I literally told the guys, like, man, you can't talk to somebody like that. You can't be that way. And because of it, and standing up for that child, I mean, he sees me at church, he comes and hugs me. He tells me about what he's doing in Boy Scouts. He's learning to play the cello. I
Mm.
mean, and that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to be just present enough to change the life of a kid, to have them just not necessarily seek me out, because I'm actually getting to see that whatever I was just naturally doing implemented in his life. But I wasn't looking to get the tap on the back, for doing that. But it's like, that is what I wanted. Those horrible teachers didn't get a hold on me. I get to change somebody's life. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's really good. So, I know about some of the, I guess I wanted to tap in on some of the you keep bringing up the missionary work. And I mean, there's a lot of that when you've gone over to do missionary work at these other places. Has it predominantly been with children's ministry, or is, I mean, a little bit of mixture of both? Like, when did you start going on missions, and what do you like? I know a lot about your Poland stuff. Some of the other stuff I didn't really know about.
I went to Peru, and that was primarily the guise of that was to build a church. There was a church that this group has been building on for a few years. It's kind of funny, while we were down there, the Church of Latter Day Saints came down for 30 days, built a church, and left.
Wow.
And it seemed like, wow, they came in, they dropped the church, and whatever. But then, what did they build? Did
Yeah.
they build a building and that was it?
Right.
And they left, whatever. But yeah, that was and we were there for 2 weeks, and yes, there was children's ministry. In fact, I got my current that pastor that I was currently at the church that I was going to. He was there, and I got an opportunity to go with the hosting pastor to a local supermarket or whatever, and I bought a bunch of Hot Wheels.
Hmm.
And I came back, and we were playing Hot Wheels with the kid. I was playing Hot Wheels with the kiddos, and my pastor walked by and was like, "Hey, we're here to build a church," because they were in there laying tile in some rooms.
Yeah.
And I'm like, me being the loving, sarcastic person I am, I just turned to him. I said, "I am." And I continue to play.
That's right. That's right.
So yeah, primarily it's been children's ministry. There's been some great things that I've learned. You go with the mindset that you've got a mission, you've got something that you're supposed to do,
Yeah.
and sometimes it works out perfectly, and then sometimes, if God's really working, I think he's got a mission for you,
Yeah.
and you're going to learn something or get something shown out of it. And I have every time. The rest of them have been Poland, and yes, they've been children's ministry. I've got an extensive art background, and so I've been able to teach pottery and ceramics and painting to Polish group. And not to, I'm a very humble person. Now, the first year I went, I had one of the largest groups. It was 25. Usually they had 10 kids sign up for most of the workshops. The last year I had 50 kids.
Wow.
Sign up. Yeah. And so it's a big undertaking, a little bit of the language barrier, but also planning and having enough supplies, and trying to there's no, it takes away from some of the one-on-one a little bit.
Mm.
All in all, I guess, again, humble. God has blessed me with such a great personality that I'm outgoing and structured, and then the kids just fall in love with me, and I'm just like, we're playing music, we're talking, we're having, whatever. They're teaching me Polish words, I'm teaching them English words. We're, and some of it's not even touching the bare minimal of, like, teaching them to paint. Some of them already kind of have an idea.
Mm-hmm.
They came in with an idea that they were going to do something, and I just let them go. And in that time frame, that hour that we get to spend all week long, we're learning about stuff. We talk, the pottery, how the clay, we're clay, and God's the potter, and just those little subtle conversations, and then watching people just have a blast.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So is there like a translator there sometimes?
Sometimes they're supposed to be. A lot of times they're teenage-led counselors.
Okay.
And so if they get an opportunity to get sidetracked and go talk to somebody else, they leave me high and dry, which is fine. I've first year that was extremely frustrating.
Yeah.
After that, it's just like, I just go ahead and go with it. And typically a lot of the kids are in some kind of school that or they're learning English as well.
Okay.
So then some of the kids speak better English than I do. And so then they're helping me interpret, and if we run into stuff, very bright-eyed, ready to just absorb whatever as well. There's just
Have you been able to learn some of their language?
Yeah, I've learned some. You can put me on point, but like your hello, like Dzień dobry, and stuff like super is like if they did a super job, it's super, but you got to make sure you don't talk like I do and then go super, because then it sounds like soup. And so then I'm basically just telling them soup the whole time. I've learned a little bit of slang, like essa, and you do your hands kind of like your surfer or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's cool.
That's cool, man. I love stuff like that. I love hearing stories like that too. Well, so if I can go this direction, shut me down if you want to, but I know you, we've been talking a lot about here recently, and I heard you say through some of your story, you said something about your first diagnosis. So what was that like from that moment? Like, can you guide us through, any of the listeners, because you were a believer when this happened, right?
Yes.
What was that like then? And then can you walk me through the faith journey of all the way up till right now, like where you're at now with that?
Absolutely. Feel very comfortable in it. The first time, I guess it was a little different and a little easier in the sense that I got diagnosed with cancer. I sought out opinions for care. I got ended up getting a great facility to help me. Things got wrote out, pretty much. And so there wasn't like an abundance of me having to like be concerned and prayerful and whatnot. I believe God had a hold of it. I believe God put me in the right hands for care, and I let things go, and everything seemed to work out.
What year was this?
This was 2018.
Okay.
2018, I got diagnosed with the colon cancer. It was a fluke. It wasn't your normal signs of colon cancer. So it was kind of like, it was, I guess, just developing.
Yeah.
So we caught it really soon, was able to surgically remove it, do a little small bit of chemo. Basically, I was almost 5 years cancer free up until September of last year. In that midst, you kind of, I was 44 at the time. So it's kind of like a old man disease. You don't think about cancer at 44, think about older people that have it, never really, my knowledge was minimal. I knew some people that had cancer, whatever. I had already had it set in my mind that if I ever got cancer, I wasn't going to do chemo, because what I saw of people, in their 70s, it took them down, and they were unable to do a lot of stuff, and energy level, blah, blah, blah. Well, when you're presenting that at 44, then you're faced with a different decision. Of course, they don't give you a cancer-free diagnosis till about 2 years of being in remission or whatever. So basically that was 2020. In that midst, my mom developed pancreatic cancer and died. My best friend in 2020 developed lung cancer and then died. So I I had a lot of what would you say, like survivor's guilt. I didn't really want to talk about it. I didn't want to really when people would bring it up, I wouldn't, that they're going through cancer. I wanted to be supportive, but I didn't want to like, well, hey, I'm cancer free.
Right.
I will say that if this helps anybody that's listening, cancer is not the same. Regardless whether if you got colon cancer and I got colon cancer, it's not the same for each of us. The cancer label is the same, but our bodies are going to take different routes.
I got you.
Our mental status is going to be different.
Yeah.
It is extremely loving and caring and helpful that people want to be involved or want to, but sometimes it's very annoying to hear do this. My grandfather had breast cancer, or my grandfather had skin cancer. You should do this, you should do that. Sometimes people that are at the cusp of not knowing don't know how to take it, and you're a lot of people's intentions are there. The actions aren't necessarily the best. That being said, I did it the first go round with family. I learned some of who my friends were. Some people showed up for me that I didn't expect, and some people that didn't, that I was counting on, but I managed through it. Was living in the mindset that I was cancer free. Unfortunately, there was some stuff that hindsight 2020, last year in April, I had some issues and stuff, but I didn't. Even my doctor didn't tie it into resurgence of colon cancer, and then things continued to progress, and then in September did a colonoscopy, and then was diagnosed with colon cancer again. The idea of it coming back was not on my mind because thought I was cancer free and whatnot. Fortunately, stage 4 cancer, pretty large, unable to do surgery for it, and then they ended up doing a PET scan and found 2 other places in my body that are not supposed to be there. They did the biopsy of my neck, and I've got stage 4 cancer there. Did genetics testing, found out that I have a mutated gene that leads to usually breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, and colon cancer. My mom died of pancreatic cancer, so they biopsied my pancreas to see if that's not got any cancer, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
This time around, though, I have thousands of people praying for me, a lot more than before. I even joked with my pastor when the elders prayed over me. It's like, it's kind of funny that I came to this church without wanting to know anybody and wanting to get to know anybody.
Yeah.
And now I'm sitting here with a full leadership praying for me.
Yeah.
And man, it's overwhelming, and it feels good to know that I've got people that I don't probably can't even tell you their names or what Bible group they're in, but their group is praying for me. In fact, recently, this might bring a little tears to my eye just because one of the elders' daughters that I get to work with, she literally, I was badging in for children's ministry. She's like, "Hey, Mr. Tommy, how's your treatment going?" And it's just like, I didn't expect a 10-year-old girl to kind of ask about that. And I knew that their family was praying for me and stuff, but it's just like, it just puts you in a different perspective that her focus is that, how am I doing? I'm a 51-year-old man. She's a 10-year-old girl. She should be worried about reading books and math and passing classes and whatever. And it's like, man, that is the greatest thing, because that's like, we serve such a gracious God that even on the mind of a child, I'm concerned.
Yeah. That is, man, that's wow, that teared me up, because it's children are so resilient that they'll shock the crap out of you with the things that they ask you or the things they'll tell you. You're like, I didn't expect that to come from a child. So that's really cool to hear, man. Thanks for just talking about that. So to kind of piggyback off that, and with that, for anybody that listens to this eventually or when it comes out, you said I know you're involved in the ministry and Encounter. Can you kind of explain what that is, and then the groups that meet there, so that way people know that they can find that? Because I know one of them isn't one of those groups, a cancer support group. So,
yeah, I could do that. Let me piggyback, because I don't know did I completely answer your question.
Okay.
Were you asking also how the cancer, like how I'm working through that as far as like that adversity, and in my faith, or was that something
Yeah,
that you
if
got?
you can if you can put these two together with
Okay.
the encounter thing, and like how are you dealing with that with your faith right now, and then are you still, the things you're doing, like still serving, and kind of bring up encounter
Okay.
with that. Yeah.
Okay. I will say my faith is stronger now, and I say that with kind of a giggle, just because I do have those moments of, man, why me? Why me? Why me?
Right. Right.
But in that same sense, I still stand on that firm foundation.
Mm.
Why not me?
Mm.
Many times people have asked me, like, man, do you feel like, this is kind of a heavy burden? Absolutely. But in the same sense, I'm so glad that God has given it to me, because there are people that are out there that are weaker. And I'm
Mm.
not saying I'm like super strong,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that would just roll over and say, "Hey, this is the end of me." And sometimes it's the mindset that kills us. A lot
Mm.
of times we
That's
get into
yeah.
a battle of our mind. Oh well, woe is me. God doesn't love me. I don't have. And look at this. This is another issue. My house burnt down. My car's broke down.
Yeah.
Now I've got cancer. I should just roll over and die. And is there times that I'm like, man, it would be easier just to leave?
Right.
Absolutely. But in the same sense, man, I am so grateful that I do have it. It has given me a different outlook, kind of a Paul, like being in jail,
Yeah.
being thankful and grateful for what God has given me, because in the end result, I know where I'm going. I have no shadow of a doubt that
Yeah.
I'm going to heaven.
Yeah.
I know that Jesus is going to say, "Come on in, faithful servant."
Yeah.
I don't have a doubt in my mind in that. If he was to take me today, then I'm going to be someplace and my rewards are there. But if he doesn't, God's still going to get the glory, and the story is going to be to him. And
Mm.
I'm going to be able to tell some people, look, I went through some adversity,
Mm-hmm.
and I went through some horrible stuff, and some shaky ground, but God had me through it the whole way. And I can look back and go, yeah, there was this moment here and this moment here. And I'm telling you, it gets better. And God has got it, and it's a struggle sometimes, because especially with my own abilities, I can rely on my own abilities. If
Yeah.
if my car broke down, I'd figure out what the problem was, replace the part, and move on.
Right.
If I I needed to paint the house, paint the house. I'm not going to sit and wait. And it's like, God, should it be gray or should it be brown? That
Yeah.
type of thing. But in the same sense of the grander scheme of things, there are those times where you just have to wait on God, and you have
Mm.
to and there's things like, being jobless, that people are like, oh, jobless and whatnot. And, there's biblical things of like, those that don't work, don't eat,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like, and that puts a little stigma in you. It's like, man, if I don't have a job, I'm not going to have any food,
Yeah.
but in the same sense, sometimes there's those moments that God's like, hey, wait on me. Yeah, I can put you at a job at McDonald's for $12 an hour, and you're struggling, working 25 hours a week, or just give me a little bit, lean in me and a little bit more. Or, hey, take that job at McDonald's
Mm-hmm.
right now. Lean in on me a little bit more, and I will bring you to that job that's $18 an hour,
Yeah.
that's 40 hours a week. And I don't think a lot of people understand that perspective, or that God has it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, yeah. No,
yeah.
yeah. Just to piggyback off that, you're right, because I think a lot of us in today's world too, we want the instant.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
can instantly find any. Back in our day, if we had a question, we had to either go to an encyclopedia, learn it in a book, or from somebody that knew it.
Yeah.
You look it up, you're instantly there. You can find anything on a map. You can, and then like once you do, you're kind of bored with it.
I remember Randy Mountain Alley Nap books and sitting in the car, and having to swing over and stop and look, make sure you were on the right road. And if you took the wrong road, there wasn't nothing saying, hey, please turn around, take a U-turn, whatever it was. You travel back 5 miles to the right exit, Yeah, absolutely.
And so, with this process, I feel like you're explaining, and the thing I try to tell people too is like, Jesus is still all about relationship. Just because we have the technology, it's still about relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that, man, just like with anybody, it takes time. That's sitting down like this, getting to know them, getting to talk with them. And it's not just this instant click of a button kind of thing.
You say relationship, when you said, they're on fire, those churchy words and whatnot.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we throw out that personal relationship with Christ in an idea that, it gives people that leadway where they can just do whatever they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's my walk with Jesus, whatever.
Right.
But I think the walk with Jesus, the walk with God, is standardized. It is a textbook thing the relationship comes when you're sitting down and having those conversations with God,
Mm.
and you're having those intimate moments, and you're reading the word, and the word opens up to you. One moment, the prodigal son shows you one way, or it doesn't mean nothing. It doesn't mean a hill of beans to you. And then the next time you read it, it's like open and comes into you on a flood. I think that's where the personal part of it starts coming into
Yeah,
into
yeah.
play. I think we can kind of tend to, when we want to do it ourselves or do it our own way, we tend to manipulate the Bible into our own stuff. And
Mhm.
another thing I heard John MacArthur say? We're free in all things, but we're not free to do all things.
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
And that's those are those ideas. But in that type of adversity type of situation, I found myself. Well, I was in a Bible study. Justin Blair was teaching that Bible study, and there was another lady that was in there. She discovered she had breast cancer.
Mhm.
So, and she was speaking at the encounter. So I went in support of her, sat in a group, and it's kind of funny. I don't know how it works out for me, but it just does. A lot of people don't know that I've never been an addict, and I know
Mhm.
that, sometimes that's like, what, how, I mean, I've been addicted to cherry Pepsi and I smoke cigarettes for, whatever.
Yeah.
So, I think there's an encompassing, everybody has an addictive,
Right.
at addiction or
Something,
whatever.
yeah.
It's just funny that, I, for some reason I can meld so well that I've sat around a table full of addicts and bring up something like I remember one time at Jamel's house, we were sitting there, and they were talking about some stuff, and I was like, yeah, I said I could walk into a trap house and never pick up a needle and put it in my arm.
Right.
I said, but I couldn't walk into a house of ill repute without at least having dirty thoughts in my head. And they're like, and they skip over the glaze over the fact that I might walk into a house of ill repute and have dirty thought. I'm like,
Yeah.
you're not an addict? And I'm like, no. And they're like, what? I thought you were one of us. And it's like, but anyway, so somehow, I meld in real well with everybody. And I think that part of the way God designed me too, that I just don't judge based off of your circumstances. I don't.
Yeah.
Getting back to that, I went to that encounter group for that first time, and I knew that there was a couple other groups meeting, but I didn't know the whole idea. Pretty much thought it was just an addicts group,
Uh-huh.
and it was real small at the time. Sat there and talked, and of course, I felt like I needed to say something to her, and everybody else is like, "Hey, I'm Leroy, and I'm a recovering alcoholic, and
Yeah.
I'm Tommy, and I don't have whatever." But
I'm just here.
we sat and talked, and then I would show up occasionally, learned a little bit more about Encounter, and then one time I was there, nobody was running a soundboard for Justin,
Yeah.
and I was like, "You don't have anybody?" He's like, "No, I got to do." I'm like, "Now you do." So
Yeah.
I started going, and then I got to know some of the people that were in grief, and of course, I just lost my friend, my best friend. I was struggling with stuff, and but being the hard-headed person I am, I didn't think I needed a grief group or
Mhm.
whatever. I also had visited the cancer group a few times. There were some people in the grief group that kind of reached out to me, like they knew that I needed grief, and I didn't know that I needed grief,
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I discovered in this is that I was a lot more devastated that my best friend passed away
Mm.
than my mom, and they happened like back to back within a year or two.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to figure this out, and of course, still having the survivor's guilt of,
Uh-huh.
of going, being a cancer survivor and whatnot. And so it helped quite a bit. Encounters our Wednesday night group meeting. Right now, typically we have a teaching moment, 30-minute teaching moment, and then we break off into groups. And I want to say we've got 7 or 8 groups. We have a grief group, we have a marriage group that meets every other Wednesday. We have a cancer group. We have a Men Overcoming Adversity group, which kind of came off as kind of like an overspill, because some of the people at the addictions group or whatever felt like they didn't want to go to the addictions group every Wednesday, and
Mhm.
so but it has grown to where it's not like just addicts addiction group.
I got you.
People are coming. There's people not that I can mention, who and whatnot, because we have confidentiality,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like, I there is a military gentleman that comes, and
Okay, cool.
had some stuff that was going on in his life, and he's been regularly coming every Wednesday.
It's awesome.
And then there's a Women Overcoming Adversity
Mhm.
group, and then there's a Women at the Well. The Women at the Well, a group for women that have had some kind of sexual exploitation,
Oh, okay.
whether they've been trafficked or raped or taken advantage of,
Yeah, yeah.
or prostituted, whatever the case may be. And I'm not even for sure of all of it, because obviously I'm a male
Yeah.
and I don't go to the group and,
Yeah.
and stuff. But it is, from what I understand, it is extremely helpful for women that have gone through some kind of sexual exploitation
That's awesome.
type
Yeah.
situation. That's it. I know that they're working on a military recovery group of some sort. I think there's an issue with anonymity as well because, I guess there's fallback if you're in the military and you're going to a group and then you go to a group with other military or somebody says, hey, kind of similar with addictions group, if somebody goes, hey, that's such and such mom and dad, and she's in,
Yeah.
addictions group, and then because people don't know how to not run their mouth,
Right. Right.
and
I know.
so I know that group, I don't know if it's going to end up being in an encounter, if it's going to be on another day,
Okay.
but they're working on that and some other stuff. There's some talks of Al-Anon or whatever,
Al-Anon, yeah, yeah.
and stuff, and there's some talks of some family support for people that have family members that are recovering addicts or whatever the case may be. So I'm not sure exactly where that's going. On average, are 250, and I remember when 20, 30.
Right. So
and
you've
it's
been
like,
going since those early days. That's awesome to see it grow to that and God using it.
Yeah.
And then just from when I used to go, I know there's other groups that have spun off of, I mainly just went to the addictions group at the time, and I still point people that I know to go there on Wednesday nights.
Yeah, there's some dynamics that have changed. There's some recovery homes that have had to close, and then there's some, and stuff. And so that kind of, because with the addictions group, some of them are doing it because they want to, and then some of them are doing it because they're having to follow the letter of the law.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, they're some of them are there not because they want to, because they're just checking the boxes, kind of like people that go to church.
Yeah,
it's like, hey, started up the Cadillac, got to drive to church, got to sit in my seat. Otherwise they're going to think I'm a sinner, and
so what all outside of Encounter and like with children's ministry on Sunday, are there any other things that I wanted you to, talk about that you, as far as serving or ministry, like what other things are you involved with outside of, I know you do children's ministry on Sundays and Encounter faithfully every Wednesday. What else is there?
Well, on Monday night we have a men's group that I got kind of tasked into helping lead. And so there's that. So that can be just about any men that come that need. And we actually meet at the church. It's not in the home because we kind of outgrew a home. When we were first meeting, we went from like 5 or 6 to like 15. So and those numbers kind of change. We actually in that men's group we've got quite a bit of some ex-military, some gentlemen that are kind of new. Like we have a guy that just gave his life to Christ within the last year, and he's kind of trying to discover what the road is. And then we've got a chaplain that comes to our group. So I mean, so it's pretty cool. As far as that goes, I mean, that's what I do, like resume built, type of stuff. It's on the book. I mean, wherever God gets me in, and if He's got something, if I've got to stop on when I'm riding the motorcycle because God's telling me give this man $20 for whatever reason, I'm doing that. Whatever He's got for me, I mean, I'm open to it. Sometimes it sucks because it's my last $20, and that or whatever. But I work. Well, I'm on short-term disability right now, so so I have a little bit more free time than, because I don't go and fill 40 hours a week at an actual job, But
good, Tommy. Thank you, man. Tommy being my first guest. Yeah, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up this time, and maybe there'll be a part 2 down the road or something. Maybe we could talk even more about a specific thing. But I want to thank you. Appreciate your time, brother.
Recently our one of our associate pastors, preached because we're starting a Genesis series, and one of the things that I really liked it, I'm going to quote him, Carl Kuhn. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah.
Anyway, he said, we were completely unnecessary, but was created anyway. The idea of the word unnecessary is kind of like, oh, it sounds kind of negative, but God didn't need me.
Yeah.
I was completely unnecessary. There is no reason for God to have designed me except that He has a plan for me, and that I was created anyway to whatever. So, and in that, piggybacking on the cancer thing, it put me, as I was thinking through that, it's like, I have cancer to bring someone to Christ. And that's not what a lot of people think. They're like, I've got cancer. Why? This is an inconvenience to my life. I've got plans or whatever. Yeah. But at some point in time, I'm probably going to run into somebody, whether I just plant a seed or bring them to Christ, and I've been blessed. The place I get treatment at was wearing my Justin Bieber t-shirt, and they started a conversation with me. These people that were waiting for their family member that was going through surgery for colon cancer. We started talking, and then I said, hey, I'll pray for you. And I went to my appointment, and God just laid it on my heart. And why didn't you stop and pray for him?
Yeah.
You walked away. And I was like, okay, I'll go back, God. If they're still sitting there, I'll go back and I'll pray for them. And I went back and said, hey, look, Lord laid it on my heart. I need to pray with you right now. And I prayed with them. I got to know them. They've every time I go up for treatment, they're calling me. They're wanting the best for me. They've they sent me a book, Kill Cancer, Not People, to read through. I mean, and she's one of the ladies is sending me some kind of. She said it's really gross, but you drop it, a couple droplets in water, and it's like a natural. It's got some kind of turkey tail and some other stuff and whatnot. So they want me, this family that I barely know.
Yeah.
They want me to survive my cancer because of why? Because I sat down and I prayed with them. I mean, it's just,
Wow.
It's crazy.
That's really cool. People used to always ask me, like, why doesn't God just, if you're an addict, alcoholic, why doesn't he just take that from you? And he does for some people.
Yeah.
And I've seen him do that.
Absolutely.
But for some of us, I feel like exactly what you said, is it's because he wants me to use my personal story and my own struggles that I still, those cravings and things like that, to lead somebody else specifically to God as well. And to walk it with them and say, hey, for some people, they can pray it away, completely be transformed. And I've seen and know those people that have never touched anything ever again. But for some of us, we need 12 steps to kind of walk through this path and get out of our way and get out of ourselves, because I had to, and it's Bible 101. And that's what, for me, I go to this thing called Recovery Church now, and we explain that. The 12 steps are Bible 101. If you know the history of it, and here, let us show you scripture along with this and get you out of your way, cleanse yourself up, and how to restore yourself. And man, it's beautiful when you can start to see it from that side.
Absolutely. When you start recognizing that God's plan, God's story, the Bible, and how it lays out, and like you said, I've seen some people that go up and they go to the altar and they're no longer depressed ever again.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us want something like that, especially when we're going through stuff. But if we think about the Bible and a lot of the characters in the Bible, David wasn't given, he was promised to be king, but he wasn't just given a crown and given it, he had to go through stuff. He had to kill Goliath. Peter, he was told the church was going to be built on him, and he had to deny Jesus. And he went, and he felt so guilty. He went back to fishing. Yeah. He left his ministry, so to speak. So, I mean, there's no direct answer on how we're going to navigate this except for Jesus. That is our only hope,
That's true, man. I love when people bring up David, because for him to be called a man after God's own heart, but still look at all the crap he did.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's a roller coaster ride. He continued to seek Jesus. He continued to do that. I think it helps that he had some Nathans and some other people in his corner. And that's kind of what we've been talking about, like not doing this thing alone.
Yeah. No.
That's the premise of this whole thing, is to
we
have
need community,
people with you.
Absolutely.
Man, it makes just the world of difference. And even doing it when you don't want to, even having some people there. And it's like, man, it's okay to have those feelings. It's okay to have the doubts and those, man, I kind of don't want to do this today kind of thing. But to have people in your corner, it makes a world of difference.
And there's those times, bringing that up kind of encompasses everything. There's those times that I don't feel like getting up and going to church. And there's those times that's like, I feel like drawn away. Like I've been asked, hey, you want to go hang out? No, I'll stay at home. And it's like, hey, sorry, man, I wasn't feeling like peopling today. And and I know it's wrong in the sense that, I need that community. I need people around me building me up. I'm an encourager. I'm going to build people up. Even if I'm having the rattiest day and nobody notices that I'm having the rattiest day, I feel like it's in me to build people up. And so I know I need that as well. And it's easy, because when you start pulling yourself away and you don't have that community, it tailspins you into that negative thought process and that mental stuff of just, oh, woe is me,
That's good, man. So is there any I know that one thing you said was really good. Is there any last minute anything you want to say?
Not that I could think of. Do you mind if I pray us out?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's pray it out and record it. Yeah.
Okay. Lord, thank you for this opportunity to sit and talk with Travis. Lord, I know that he is embarking on something that he feels led by you to do, and he's going to have some special guests and some stories and some conversations about how you implement in his life and how you are the bigger picture, the grander scheme of things. Lord, just as you press in him, just make sure that he is listening and It's not about him, it's about you. And Lord, just I thank you for this opportunity to sit and talk. You have grown me maturity and things, just even in just thinking about the cancer and how didn't like talking about it, didn't really like having conversations about it, and the survivor's guilt, Lord. And you've got me to this point where, yeah, I've got it again, but it doesn't matter because you've got it.
Yes.
You've got control over it. You're going to make a bigger story out of this. You're going to get the glory out of it. You're going to bring somebody to Christ. You're going to show somebody how they can deal with it a little easier, or lean in on you a little bit more, Lord. And I'm so grateful for you. I'm so thankful for what you've done in my life. The what I may see as little changes of just accepting you as my Savior and Lord, to the current time now, to getting so much joy out of serving you and being for you in your precious, precious name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Tommy.
No problem.
Man, that was my friend Tommy Langham, and I hope his story encouraged your soul today as much as it encouraged mine sitting across from him. If you're walking through something hard right now, maybe a diagnosis, a setback, a season that just doesn't make sense, I hope this conversation reminded you that faithfulness doesn't require having all the answers. It just requires you showing up. If something from today resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Reach out through our social media, shoot us an email, or drop it in the comments. Remember, this is an interactive show, and your voice genuinely does matter here. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, or follow so you never miss a new one. And please share this one. Somebody out there in your life needs to hear Tommy's story this week. You can also follow us on social media for updates and monthly giveaways, and I'd love to connect with you there as well. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next time on The Discipleship